So I think Newcastle United are going to have a very good season next season. I'm going to explain why in today's video. I think a lot of people sleep on Newcastle because they're not traditional big six, and a lot of the deals they do are more smart than super big signings. But I think, with the main bulk of the squad fit, no European football, so there's probably going to be less injuries. The fact that Eddie Howe is a very good manager that actually had the fourth best numbers in the Premier League last season, despite finishing seventh, playing some good football, and the fact that they were willing to spend 50-60 million on Olise almost confirms they've got 60 million to spend on the right winger there, which I think is probably the most important position along with right centre-back now. Isak is staying, Bruno Guimaraes is staying. Some of the players they've been linked to I think are better than people think. We're going to break down why I think people are sleeping on Newcastle, why I think Newcastle are in a good place. We're going to talk about Newcastle, and then I'm going to talk about the transfers, particularly the right wing situation, because Newcastle have 50 to 60 million to spend on the right wing. After June 30th, watch Newcastle make some moves. There's a bit of negativity around Newcastle, I think, at the moment, because, some of the names they're linked to aren't the most exciting. Kelly's obviously come in as, depth. Trafford's come in as potential long-term replacement, or coming in. Is that done or not done? Coming in as potential long-term replacement for Pope. DCL isn't particularly exciting. Kilman isn't particularly exciting, and I believe he's left-footed, so you need a right-footer. But I do think Kilman's a very good player. And you're hearing stuff about like Minter maybe going, and I think, for me, he should be given a go at Newcastle. He's a good player, but PSR calls. But for me, I think Newcastle are a lot better off than people think. So this is just the bulk of Newcastle. This is everybody fit. If everybody is fit, this is what Newcastle look like. Very good front three. You haven't seen the best of Harvey Barnes yet. You haven't seen the best of Tonali yet because of injury issues. But they were brought in last season to be starters. They were unable to be starters because of injury issues. So Eddie Howe essentially went into last season with, two young fullbacks coming in and two players he planned to be starters that he couldn't use all season. So he barely got to use his new signings last year. But if everybody's fit, I think Newcastle squad is good. You've also got Willock. Willock, in my opinion, very underrated player. I really am a big fan of Joe Willock. I think he's a very good player. Livramento, I think, could gradually push Trippier out. I think Livramento's got elite level potential. Newcastle have a very good bulk to their squad. Lloyd Kelly can come and he can play left back, left centre back. He's going to be the depth option to Hall and Botman. In form, fit Botman is a good player. He started the season well, got injured, then came back, didn't look good, got injured again. But we know what Botman's capable of. He's a very good player. Lewis Hall, very good player, showed potential. Eddie Howe finally gave him a run in, and he's going to get better and better. Could even go into midfield if needed. Very technical players, going to allow Eddie Howe for adaptations. Lloyd Kelly's going to come in as backup to that. Perfect. Bosh. Okay, James Trafford. James Trafford, again, not the most exciting name. Didn't have the best season at Burnley, but he is 21. Look at where all the elite level goalkeepers were at Trafford's age. They weren't in the Premier League. Burnley conceding so many shots did not help Trafford. But what Trafford brings is a player that is good on the ball. A player that is going to allow Eddie Howe to utilise a goalkeeper and build up as a third centre-back, change formations, and potentially have tactical adaptations as he phases Pope out. Now, I think Nick Pope is a very good goalkeeper, but Eddie Howe may lean towards a more ball-playing keeper. Most importantly, Bruno Guimaraes and Isak staying. In my opinion, Bruno Guimaraes and Isak are world-class players. I'm saying this as a Manchester United fan. I think the Newcastle have two world-class players in Bruno Guimaraes and Alexander Isak. I mean, Isak, best conversion rate in the Premier League, I think, best goals to minute rate in the Premier League. But he's not just a goal scorer. He can drop deep, he can link up play, he can dribble, he can drive the ball forward in transition, he can go out wide, he can run the channels, he can create space. His ability to manipulate defenders, create separation, create shooting angles for himself, run into the box, get into the right area. You got a top player in Isak. You've got a world-class player in Bruno Guimaraes whose release clause is done. So unless someone bids crazy money, he's staying at Newcastle. And it looks like Bruno Guimaraes is very Newcastle through and through. He wants to stay at Newcastle. So they're staying. You've got Anthony Gordon, that is a top-class player in my opinion, and a brilliant season, makes things happen. I don't know why he isn't playing in the Euros. If you did not bring Rashford, you did not bring Grealish, and you do not have any natural left winger, because Eze's better in central spaces, Foden's better in central spaces, Bowen's on the right, Palmer's on the right, Saka's on the right. How is Gordon getting 3 minutes? Gordon created a chance, I'm pretty sure, and the 3 minutes was on the pitch. I've been saying this for ages. Gordon has to play for England because it's balanced. It's not about sticking your best 11 players on the pitch because Foden and Bellingham are both brilliant. They can't play together. Your best 11 is Gordon on the left, Saka on the right, maybe Palmer after his run-in, but Saka does normally do it for England. Kane up top. How much better did Kane look when Gordon came on? I don't know what Southgate's on. But Gordon's a top player. I think Joe Linton's a really good player when fit. I think Shah, I put down, is one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. His ball-playing ability is very good. I think Willett can be a very good player. Botman, we know, is a good player with that every season. Tonali's obviously a good player. Miley, Hall, Anderson, Livramento, all got good potential. And a fit Harvey Barnes shows promise. So when you look at the Newcastle's current team, I think they're in a good place. You look at them here, yeah, they came 7th in the league, but look at their goal difference. Their goal difference was 23. That is better than Villa's, that's better than Spurs, that's better than Chelsea's. I always say the best way to judge a team to see if they really deserve to finish where they finished is goal difference. I think goal difference is the best metric to judge a team. City and Arsenal's goal difference was the same, 2 points between them. Newcastle's goal difference was the 4th best. And in my opinion, Newcastle's underlying numbers were the 4th best with all the injuries they had. Newcastle came 7th with all the injuries they had, all the setbacks they had, Eddie Howe not being able to play his main team. Newcastle, at the beginning of the season and when the bulk of the squad was fit, played good, convincing football. Man United may have finished on the same amount of points as Newcastle, but as a Manchester United fan, we didn't play good, convincing football. Yes, there were some games where Newcastle looked atrocious, but they had a lot of injuries. But when the bulk of Newcastle's squad was fit, they beat PSG, they beat big sides, they played good, attractive football when the bulk of their squad was fit. They have plus 23 goal difference. They scored more goals than Liverpool, who finished 3rd. They had all those defensive injuries and defence let them down. They sort out the defence, it stays fit. They bring in a top right winger that's going to score even more goals. They keep the bulk of their squad fit. I think Newcastle will finish in the top 4 next season. I really think they can because they've got no Champions League, they've got no distractions. And I always say this, plus 23 goal difference, they had a lot better numbers than Villa. Villa are going to be in the Champions League, have a lot of competition. People sleep on Newcastle. They didn't deserve to finish 4th, no. But when you look at the injuries they've had, the way they play when players were fit, I think Eddie Howe is being very looked over. I think very, very looked over. But let's talk about Newcastle. Let's talk about where they're at, what they need, all of that stuff. So, beat top teams last season. The new signings barely played. So Eddie Howe barely got to use his new signings last season, which wasn't particularly fair on him. And I think, when people were saying Eddie Howe out on Twitter, and I thought that was very unfair with the injuries, couldn't play his new players, couldn't integrate them. I think he plays good football when the bulk of his squad is fit. And you can see that if you watch Newcastle. They've got no UCL next season. They'll probably have less injuries next season because surely it's impossible to have any more than they had this season. And I think that their signings from last season will play more and there'll be additions this season. It's basically been confirmed that Newcastle have 50-60 million to spend on the right wing. Newcastle went in for Olise. Newcastle went in the Olise race. Okay, so they had 50-60 million to spend on the right wing. Man United have loved Olise. Man United have been talks with Olise for ages, but we weren't one of the 3 clubs named in the Olise race because we didn't have the funds, because we need a centre-back and a DM first. We've got Ahmad and Garnacho that can play on the right that I'm happy about. Anthony we need to get rid of but won't get rid of. Sancho we need to get rid of. And Mason Greenwood, who could potentially come back, but probably won't. We have 5 options for the right wing. So obviously we can't go for Olise until we spend. But the fact that Newcastle were able to go for Olise and not Man United says that Newcastle have 50-60 million there for a right wing. And I think now Kelly's in, now Trafford's basically in, now Guimaraes and Isak are staying. I think what Newcastle need to spend their money on is a right centre-back because Shah is ageing. I think Shah is a top player, but he is ageing. That's good on the ball, and they need a right wing. That's where the money needs to go. And then you potentially look at, can we get someone on loan to come in case Isak gets injured? Do we have the money for an Mbuemo if we sell this person? That's what Newcastle need to look at. So let's look at the right wing options and let's look at who Newcastle have been linked to on the right wing. So Craig Hope has obviously confirmed that Olise, Nico Williams and Pedro Neto were all watched. Olise's gone. Nico Williams is brilliant, but his wages could be an issue. Pedro Neto is brilliant, but his injury issues could be an issue, and that's something Newcastle want to avoid. They've also been linked to Noni Madueke and Mbuemo, Premier League proven players that could be available at a decent fee. So we're going to talk quickly about Pedro Neto. If Pedro Neto stays fit and you can get him for the right price, he'd be brilliant at Newcastle. He is direct, he's good 1v1, he can get the ball and he can just eat up space with the ball. He's a competent ball progressor, ball carrier, one of the best there is, and he likes to attack, he makes things happen, he puts in crosses. Pedro Neto dribbles down the line, gets past defenders, gets down the byline, cross to Isak goal, bish bash bosh. He's got quick feet, he uses his body to feint and throw off defenders, he's difficult to tackle, he's one of the best dribblers, and he's able to navigate out of tight areas, he's able to find space, he's able to combine with players in the half spaces. If you have a Willock or someone playing as like a right-sided 8, whoever would play there for Newcastle, he's a natural creator. He had the most assists per mins in the Premier League, but he's got the injury issues and he's got the work rate and the pressing that Eddie Howe would like. He suits the intense style of Eddie Howe ball. The question is injuries. You've got Mbuemo, who's 24, who's Premier League proven. He can play right wing and centre forward, which means then you have cover for Isak. Now, Mbuemo's a very good option because he can give you cover for Isak, but also play on the right-hand side. He got 15 goal contributions in 23 Premier League starts last season, and in a Brentford side that were missing a lot of firepower, he's been consistently good 2 seasons in the Premier League where he said, look, I can score goals, I can get assists in the Premier League. In a Newcastle side that is going to have better players around him, his output would be even better. And if you think, 17 goals and assists in the Premier League last season, 15 goals and assists in the Premier League this season, with him missing bulks of the season, he could easily get 10 plus goals, 10 plus assists for Newcastle in the Premier League next season, which is similar numbers to what Anthony Gordon got. He's a very good ball striker and he's clinical. He's one of those wingers that, there's a load of good dribbler wingers, but they don't have the end product. With Mbuemo, you get the end product. I think St. Maximin was this great winger, but he didn't have the end product, whereas Mbuemo had that end product. And he can use his feet. He's quick. His ball control's quick. He can go inside, outside. He's quite a lethal player. And again, he's quite clever. His decision-making is good. He's a hard worker. He ticks Eddie Howe's boxes. Now, this is the best option on the market, but I don't see him going to Newcastle, if I'm going to be honest. But I'm going to go through this one quickly. Nico Williams, elite dribbler, two-way winger, 1v1, gets at people, runs at people. I mean, all of the wingers Newcastle are looking at have this. But he's explosive. He makes things happen out of nowhere. He's direct. He gets down the byline. He can score. He can assist. He can create. His ball striking is good. His technical ability is good. His retention is good. Every single statistic and metric is good. He's hard working. He presses a lot. He's a top player. He got 8 goals and 19 assists in La Liga last season in 2,700 minutes. He got basically 27 goal contributions in 2,700 minutes, averaging a goal contribution every 100 minutes at age 21 years of age in La Liga, creating lots of chances. The thing about Nico Williams is he can play on the left. He can play on the right. He did predominantly play on the left last season, but he's able to play on the right. He would give that versatility, although Barnes and Gordon are better on the left, so maybe you want someone that is best on the right, but he's a top player. But one option that I think is a really underrated option, I think people are sleeping on, is Madueke. He was okay at Chelsea last season. Towards the end of the season, he established himself as the right winger and Palmer came central. If you watch them at PSV, he was a top baller. He goes to Chelsea. Chelsea just have so much talent that they don't give minutes to, they don't give proper development to, and they fall off. There's a lot of players at Chelsea that I think would be really good elsewhere in the right system. And if you look at Madueke, you look at his stats, 95th percentile for pass completion, 98th percentile for progressive carries, which is what we're going to talk about in a bit, 93rd percentile for successful take-ons, 91st percentile for touches, 89th percentile for progressive passes recorded. You've got Anthony Gordon on the left, driving at people, making things happen. Madueke can be that Anthony Gordon on the right-hand side, and that dynamic could work really, really well. He's a player that's direct and likes to make things happen. Now, the big question mark around Madueke has been his attitude. There was that penalty incident with Cole Palmer, and I think a lot of people were questioning, the attitude of Madueke. But realistically, if you think about it, that is one blip in his career, and he has always been known to be a hard-working player. He left Spurs for PSV because he wanted to take the best option for his career. He was always making moves based off not money, but what's going to be the best option for my career, what's going to be the best for my development, what's going to play more. He got 8 goals and 3 assists in 19 starts for a Chelsea side last season. 11 goal contributions in 19 starts isn't bad, especially considering the inconsistency around Chelsea. Sterling was poor. And we know Sterling's a top-level player. Mudryk had a lot of hype around him, didn't perform. Cole Palmer's the only one that's been able to really do much for Chelsea last season. And he's a very direct winger who likes to take on his man, that likes to get forward, that likes to make things happen. And I think that's something that would really impact Newcastle going forward. He drives at players. He runs at players with pace. He has good dribbling ability. He's very unpredictable. He likes to make things happen. I think he can be an Anthony Gordon-esque player. I think he can be your right-sided Anthony Gordon. He's very comfortable at receiving the ball in tight spaces, running between the lines. His movement off the ball is very good. He's a very underrated, intelligent player. He's good movement off the ball, can combine for 1-2s. He likes to stay wide, take on his fullback, get down, then come inside and shoot, but he can go inside, he can go outside. His reading of the game is good, but he's that transition player, he's that carrier. He can get the ball, he can run, he can progress play, he's a good transition outlet. I think he's a really good option for Newcastle, and I think if Newcastle spend 50 million on that right wing, their front line is almost sorted if they go big for a right centre-back. Now, if I'm Newcastle, you could get maybe a Madueke for 40 million and Diamonde for 50 million. That's 90 million. That's where I'd spend the money. I think Upamecano and Kim Min-jae could be good options, especially because Newcastle, I think, need a pace and power centre-back that's good on the ball, and you get that with all of those 3 players, because I think Bayern are open to selling those players. They seem to be open to selling a lot of players. I also think Todibo would be very good for Newcastle, but that depends on the Man United situation. Ineos, who have now got a stake in Man United, own Nice. They want to sell Todibo to United, but they can't because of UEFA laws, but they're now trying to get lawyers involved to try and get Todibo to United. I don't know if they'd want to sell to a rival, but Todibo could be available and a very good option. Links to Kilman, but he is left-footed, but I do think Kilman's a very good player. I think Kilman would be a very good player at Newcastle, weirdly, but I think because you've got Lloyd Kelly, it doesn't make sense. Like, if you'd got Tossard on the free, getting Kilman as the brought player, fair enough. Now, I think Chalobah could be an underrated option. Now, Chalobah's one of those ones where you sniff your nose at and you think, but he was very good at Chelsea towards the end of the season, and they kind of are keen on selling him. I think Tomori and Joe Gomez could be potential shouts. Now, I don't know if Joe Gomez will leave Liverpool, but he can play left back, he can play right back, he can play right centre back. There's reports of him potentially wanting more game time. Maybe he goes to a Newcastle. And Tomori was one that's linked to Newcastle that I think is a good option. It's a good centre back there in Tomori. And obviously, a lot of these players will tick that homegrown quota. Personally, if I'm Newcastle, I go for Diamonde. I would go all out for Diamonde, and I'd probably see if you could do something for Madueke if Chelsea sell. But now Chelsea missed out on Olise. I'm not sure about that. But and Mbuemo and Diamonde, if you can't get, I think Nico Williams isn't realistic. Neto will be expensive and injury prone, but I think if you can get Neto for the right price, it's a brilliant deal. But Mbuemo and Diamonde would be really good business from Newcastle. So that's my breakdown on why I think Newcastle are a lot better off than I think people think. I think Newcastle are in quite a decent position. I think Eddie Howe is a very good manager. I think they actually have some very good players. If they can stay fit, if they get a few signings over the line, a little bit of luck with injuries, I think Eddie Howe is capable of Newcastle stepping up. I think, they don't sign sort of these big names other than Tonali, but I think they make really smart business, and I think they're quite smart. And I think because they're not that traditional big six side, people sleep on them. But I think Newcastle are going to have a good season. I do. I think they can get top 4 next season. I really do. But obviously it depends what other clubs do in the market. I think the market's going to move a lot more in July after the June 30th deadline. But Newcastle fans, let me know your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching. Bye. Is it going to end?